So welcome back to Zombie Squad Cast, and I have Virginia RYKER with me
Hi,
today.
boss.
And so Virginia and I worked on a feature film, Second
Yeah,
Chances, and this was
yeah, about a decade ago,
about
actually.
just about a decade ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
and not only with film, you're also a lawyer.
I am, and a linguist. I do Scandinavian document review and translations. Been
Yeah,
on a project recently in Columbus for a limb-girdle muscular dystrophy study with a 8-year-old girl translating for her. So I get around. I do a lot of stuff.
wow, yeah. My dad and stepmother expatted and retired and then expatted to Sweden. And
Yeah.
so they've been in Sweden indefinitely, and they plan to just live out the rest of their days in Sweden. I've been there a couple of times. I took my wife there, kind of like an engagement vacation, visiting them, and then traveling throughout Scandinavia. So that's
Well,
yeah.
the way Sweden's handling COVID, I hope your folks are staying in place and staying safe because it's a mess up there. My husband's Norwegian, so I've got a lot of family in Norway,
Hmm.
and we worry about them, but I'm more worried about my friends in Sweden.
Okay. And I got a funny story, and I got another subject to bring up about Norway, about a different film I worked on, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So
Yeah.
so Virginia, go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how things have been going for you.
As I usually say, I'm a project worker, so I don't only do film. You already mentioned I'm a lawyer, I'm a linguist. So I'll do a lot of film contracts and things like that. But then I also do, I have my own little production company called Wildly Media. And for the past 7 years or so, we've been focused more on documentaries. Um, 7 years ago, my mother had a series of strokes. And so that sort of changed my trajectory. And I started looking at a lot of different things and how I could control my film world and my projects, because there were so many times I'd be pulled into a project as a producer and work my tail off, and then nothing would come of it.
Hmm.
And so I started Wildly Media for that reason, so I could start with the script and take it all the way through marketing and production and marketing. And then my mother had her strokes, and so then it was like, okay, documentaries. You have full control over, more or less, you have full control. So I've been working in documentaries for the past 7 years. Nothing's quite done yet. I've got a lot of footage, got a lot of things brewing. They're all going to be popping out in the next year and a half, probably 2 years. We just got one finished called The Politics of Trees, which is, it's actually the first in hopefully a series called The Politics of. And when we talk about politics, we're not talking about party politics. We're talking about how societies organize their resources, small p politics. And so it's shouldn't be really, we don't feel like we're creating controversial series, but it is really, we hold people accountable. And so it's an interesting series, and that one's finished. It's out right now for consideration in 10 festivals, but God only knows what's happening with festivals at this point.
Yeah.
So we're also going to be looking at PBS and seeing what we can do there, and seeing what, if the series will be put on hold, or whether we can build the series with PBS. So interesting stuff happening there. I also work as, like I said, as a film producer, and I'm now just beginning to get back into narrative stuff. And I've got a 5-part mini series that I'm working on with the author, Marshall Farron. It's called Death of a Revolution. And it is the story of how Lafayette came to America, fought in the American Revolution, and brought those values back to France, and tried to implement those values in France, only to really learn that sometimes extremism can bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
And so it's the story of him through both of the revolutions, and how he made it out, but barely. But
Yeah.
his pride and joy was the American Declaration of Independence. And it's a timely piece, because we talk about extremism and how extremism really challenges a democracy. but we also really talk about ideals of liberty and freedom, and how it was achieved in this country, and then why it didn't translate. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, so it's a pretty big budget project. We had some funding lined up before COVID hit, and since COVID hit, we sort of lost track of our funders, or they've lost track of us. It's kind of radio silence for a while. We'll see what happens. But we can't go out and film revolutionary footage with 100 or so actors in the current climate. So everything's pretty much on hold with that. So
Right.
the other thing I'm working on is virtual reality therapies.
Okay.
How they can be used for example, stroke, left side neglect. I don't know how much your viewers know about left side neglect, but when people have a stroke in the occipital part of their brain, it messes with their eyes. And sometimes they can't see a whole field of vision. So it's like you've lost your peripheral vision on one or the other side. But the whole world just sort of moves over. And so you think here is center instead of here. And there's a lot of things that are intuitive and a lot of things that aren't intuitive about this. But I think there's a lot of hope with virtual reality and therapies for stroke victims. So that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of segues into my next point would be, how have you been impacted by this? So, we can start off, professionally. Obviously, you just mentioned you lost funding with one project, and I guess generally, how have you been impacted professionally by the whole quarantine COVID?
Well, yeah, I mean, projects basically stopped. Like I mentioned, I was going to Columbus to do this interpreting as well, and the last time I was up there was March 19th, and I actually drove instead of flew because it was getting weird. I was there 2 weeks before that, and it was beginning to get weird, and then on the 19th, Maryland and Ohio still had no COVID cases. But I wasn't taking any chances, so I drove to Columbus, did my job, and we were supposed to, on the last day, she was supposed to have a biopsy, and they canceled it. And they sent me home. And I thought, well, this is odd. And I was supposed to go up a couple times in April and May, but of course, that's not happening. But, the little girl's doing fine. It's a genetic trial and genetic therapy trial. And so this is really the follow-up. The important stuff was already done. So, I'm sad that I couldn't be there with the family and follow this through, because that was personally a really interesting thing to be involved with, cutting edge medicine. But that's a project that's hit the dirt. Death of a Revolution is put on hold. We're still looking for new sources. I'm doing a lot more online translating just by virtue of the fact that I can, and there's a little bit of income there. But a lot of things have happened at home as well. My daughter's back home, so we've painted her room, added some new furniture or repainted furniture, just doing the home stuff that you don't get around to doing when you're busy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's been nice. And now this week I've been able to actually take vacation. I was supposed to be in France doing some reconnaissance for Death of a Revolution, but that all got trashed.
Yep.
So I'm at the beach, and I'm enjoying it in the fog.
I bet. Yeah. Ocean City, right, got hit with the fog, and we were talking before how it's still cold. It's almost June, and it's still.
Yeah, it's in the 50s and 60s right now.
Yeah.
It's long sleeve weather. And Saturday was nice. We were on the beach on Saturday, but since then it's just been overcast. Literally fog banks roll in. It's like Maine. I don't know if you're familiar with how the coast is on Maine. Maine. The fog rolls in really fast, and that's what's been happening here. 1 minute you think the sun's about to come out, and the next minute you're standing in the middle of a drippy cloud. So it's away, and you hear the ocean, and you smell the sand and the salt and the sea breeze. It's relaxing. It's good.
Well, they made a great movie about it, The Fog. John Carpenter's The Fog, and I think that took place, on those rocky lighthouse, kind of shores up there in Maine. I think it was Maine.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
all those ghosts obviously came out of the fog. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that fog just comes out of freaking nowhere, and
Yeah.
especially up there. Um, so you mentioned, doing all the all, personally, affected you and your daughter just been jumping on, all the house projects, I guess,
Yeah.
painting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. She when she graduated from high school, we allowed her to paint her room. And so she decided she wanted black trim around the windows and the baseboards and the doors. So we said, all right, fine. And now she's done with college and she's done with the post-bac year. And she's come home and she's like, Mom, I'm tired of black. I'm like, okay, 3 coats of white. It's on
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's now
Trying,
back to the traditional white baseboards and windows and yellow walls, and it looks lovely. So
yeah.
she's happy with it. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, me and the wife definitely, went double time on, planting flowers, fixing up our flower garden in the front and a little bit of a garden in the back, and setting up our deck and cleaning this, that, and the other thing, and repainting all sorts of stuff. And
It's amazing what you can find you haven't done when you suddenly have time to do it.
oh yeah, yeah, there was a couple of passion projects that I knocked out within a month, and then it was just like, okay. And we also brought home a kid during this whole thing, and so, you know
Wait, I don't understand. Tell me.
Oh, well, we had our first baby boy February 29th. So March 4th, I
Oh,
think we brought him home.
congratulations! I've been out of touch.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, we brought the kid home, and it's just been, building cribs and swings and all the little toy sets and all that thing, all the different things that the kid's going to play with, and you find out. I was really concerned, because I'm a freelance gig worker, film and
Yeah.
TV and audio and video, and I'd be gone, 8 to 10 to 12-hour days, or I'd be out of town on some gigs. And so it's kind of been a blessing as well as a curse. I've been able to find some telework, some at-home work a little bit here and there. But I've really been able to just knock out a lot of stuff around the house and really just be hands-on with a kid. And
I think that's a great, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's great timing for you because you don't get those
yeah,
days back. And this is the hardest period for mom. So I'm sure your wife is happy to have you around
oh yeah,
if
yeah,
she's
yeah.
not killing you.
No, no, we're doing great. Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a great 3 months, just over 3 months now. The
Yeah.
kid's just over 3 months, and it's been fantastic. I mean,
Wow.
and I've mentioned it a million times on this show before. We're actually, enjoying seeing every little micro growth, every little micro evolution of the kid. When me growing up, you'd always hear, you got to catch the first word, you got to catch the first step, and we're seeing the first smile turn into kind of a coo. He might be cooing, turning into giggling, and then that giggling is turning into laughing, and then that laughing is going to turn, and then he's making these weird noises that he's we assume is his form of communication, but that word is going to turn into hi or mommy or daddy. We're seeing
Yeah.
every little micro evolution, which I think,
It's the evolution of a little person,
yeah,
truly.
exactly.
Yeah. I love those days with my kids. I mean, it was exhausting, but the things you learn about just people generally
Hmm.
from these little human beings and is phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And I highly recommend parenthood with a lot of support.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've noticed that my patience has really grown, and in me, my patience has really
Hmm.
evolved and grown, because things I would really, before, but now it's this, little kid that can't help it, and
Yep,
you have to realize that, and then you can use that kind of patience and that kind of growth in yourself towards, business and work and
absolutely.
other relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, segue into a totally different subject. So, is there like a show you've been binge watching, or movie series of movies, even books that,
Well, yeah. I mean, my husband and I binge watch things during the year. Like we'll watch an hour or two a night, and so we'll finish a series. We watch a lot of Danish dramas, like The Bridge.
okay,
Uh,
so So, and
Yeah.
just to reiterate, obviously you are bilingual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do turn on the subtitles anyway, because Danish is a little bit hard for the Norwegian ear.
Okay.
It's I can read it. Reading the subtitles is easy. The language is when they're going back and forth between Norwegian and Swedish, or Danish and Swedish, or it's like okay, yeah. They're all just a different variation of the same thing, but some dialects are harder than others. It's like trying to get a Maine lobsterman talking to a Louisiana fisherman. They don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
It's the same job, but they don't speak the same language. Yeah. But yeah, so we've been watching a lot of the masterpiece kind of series. We're big into the not so much historical drama, but the mystery dramas and things like that. And I actually here at the beach just finished a book. So here's a shameless plug for Alan Topol. It's called Washington Power Play, and it's a political thriller. I met the author in DC a few years back, and he signed my book for me, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll get around to reading it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did, and it's pretty good. I'd like to see it filmed. I think it would make a good, not necessarily series, but I think the characters could turn into a series. He's got a few other things that have been picked up as films. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. It's an interesting book. It reads to me more like a script reads than a real drama book. There's not a lot of discussion of the feelings. So, I feel like the actors would be creating that if this were turned into a screenplay. So anybody out there wanting to do a screenplay and wanting to develop this project, get in touch, because I'd be interested.
Yeah, I recognize the name Topol. I recognize it. So yeah, maybe I did see something that he was involved with. Maybe he wrote the book of something that they made a movie out of.
He's got about 10, 12, 15 fiction books out there. And they're all basically the same kind of political power, espionage kind of books, I think. So that, Homeland Security type movies.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay. And this is somewhere in here that a couple of them have been optioned. I don't remember what they were, but so it's an interesting option idea for the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many things going on. So yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say is your next? What would you say is your next agenda or set of goals? Say for the next couple of months, 2-3 months from now.
Well, actually, another project I'm working on that I haven't mentioned is a book. I'm writing a biography of this 92-year-old man named Sam Gochin. And he's a fascinating character. He was born to Armenian refugees in Greece in 1927. And he grew up in Ethiopia until 1935. He was speaking Armenian and Ethiopian, or forgetting the local, Amharic. And then the Italians invaded. So then he moved into the Italian school and learned Italian. And then his parents were like, we have seen this before and we're not really interested in fascism. So let's send our kids to Cyprus to the American Academy. So he went to high school there. But all this is going on in the backdrop of World War II. And, by the time he's 16, he's finished with high school. He speaks 6 languages. And he comes back to Ethiopia and he works for his dad. And it's like, well, what is he going to do with this education? So he really wanted to get to the United States. And so he started working for the Ministry of Education in Ethiopia with Haile Selassie and that government. And then wound up getting a full scholarship to Syracuse and then to Harvard Law, became a US citizen through a private bill. It's the story just goes on and on and on. He's a real survivor. And at 92, he's got a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, I bet.
So it's been a 2-year project so far. I'm hoping to finish in the next couple months.
Yeah.
Most of it's done. It's just I gotta tweak it and make it more readable. I've got the history down line by line, but it's not quite a story yet. So
Yeah, now's the time.
yeah, exactly.
And like I was saying, I knocked out a number of passion projects, and again was still able to pull off, some paid work and some telework,
Yeah.
some virtual, audio video stuff. And I still have two more projects, but yeah, now's the time. It's, procrastination has really bit me in the ass before. and I think I told the story a couple of times, but the biggest example of how procrastination has affected me is, for about a year, I wanted to go to my mom's house. She's kind of low tech, struggles with Google Hangouts and Zoom and FaceTime and that stuff. And she still has a flip phone. And I want to go over there and put on put on some software on her computer to where I could remote into her computer from my computer, kind of like one of those remoting softwares.
Yeah.
And then also put on a better webcam on her computer, because we foresaw the quarantine coming. Obviously, we foresaw our kid coming, so we wanted to have her, since she couldn't possibly come over, do a lot of FaceTime, a lot of video chatting with the kid. And I just kept putting it off for a year, putting it off. I'll go over there sometime. And then the quarantine started getting in, and then the kid's birth, started, taking up the schedule. And then, maybe 2 weeks into the quarantine, finally I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go over there with gloves and mask, and it's gonna take me twice as long to PPE up and get over there, install this software, sit there and wait for this software to install. But we can't hang out. I can't sit there and eat, have lunch with her while the computer's loading and upgrading and blah, 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 blah. And, it just took forever. And we have to social distance at her house. Whereas I could have done that on a more convenient time and always been able to remote into her computer easily, and maybe even talk her into, like, maybe I could buy her a webcam, have it shipped to her house, talk her through installing it.
Putting it in, yeah.
But, like, that was a major
wake up call
as far as procrastination goes. And so ever since then, it was, how much time do I have in this day, and what can I knock out? Do a podcast, do some virtual gigs from home, paint, play with the kid. I have twice as much hands-on time as maybe, our parents had.
Yeah.
And that's not a shot at them. It's just, this is an opportunity to take advantage of. It's like, of course there's a downside to this. Of course, I was never really, Mr. Happy Hour and brunch and party every weekend with my friends. I have a very select few friends that we're actually productive, and we actually collaborate on a lot of projects, and they're friends.
Yeah.
And so, before, it was like, okay, if we're gonna have a boys' weekend, we were shooting a bunch of passion projects at the same time.
Yeah.
And then at night, going to bars and having a few cocktails and pizzas and Buffalo Wild Wings, or whatever the case may be.
Oh, a working weekend.
It's a working week. It's a boys weekend / production weekend.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I can't wait to have the the weekends at the beach, and or maybe a whole week at the beach, but there's not that many people we know that have, a spot we can just take over. We don't trust Airbnbs. I'm not exactly sure how hotels are operating just yet, but.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be here if this place didn't belong to friends and I knew they weren't using it. They hadn't been using it. Nobody's going to use it after us for at least a week. So I'm feeling okay about that. We walked down to the boardwalk and I had my mask on, and about half the people had their masks on, and I'm like, all right, we're not going to the boardwalk anymore. We're up in the 70s. So we're not even near the boardwalk. We had to drive down to go there. And it's just like,
right.
I am worried about the spikes that's coming up. It's just, they're coming. So
yeah, well, of course we're gonna get that one vaccine, and then everyone's gonna like run out, start hugging and kissing and hanging out and holding hands, and then it's gonna be like a massive
And even,
resurge
well, even if it's not a resurge of COVID, it'll be a resurge of flu or something,
or
because
super flu.
yeah, I
We
mean,
all
we just all need to be aware of this stuff and take care of ourselves, take care of our loved ones, take care of everybody else, because that's the thing. A lot of people don't understand. You're wearing a mask for everybody else. You're not wearing it for yourself.
yeah.
And a lot of people just don't understand that and don't want to worry about anybody else and feel like it's a real imposition on them. And I understand it is kind of an imposition if you're not into your little newfangled accessory.
Yeah.
But it's about a bigger world. It's not about any person. It's about the world.
Yeah.
So
It's about not only yourself, but everybody else around you.
yeah.
And of course, the ones that do set an example for the ones that don't. And I've seen on the news a couple of times, people getting jumped for not wearing a mask or
I
something
mean,
like
that's
that.
crazy too.
And
I
that's
mean,
and it's one in a million, but still, if the guy's not wearing a mask, you might not want to touch him for the same reason why you want to beat him up. You don't want to touch him,
that's
so
it. Yeah.
don't.
Why would you beat him up? Why would you? Yeah. Truly.
You just got it all over yourself. So,
Yeah.
but
Truly.
unfortunately that happened. But those wearing the mask should, are setting the example for those that aren't. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody's got to be respectful. That's just the big thing in this world. We all just need to be respectful of each other, and that means we wear masks for others. They wear masks for us. If you're not wearing a mask, well, don't come anywhere near me. Thank you.
yeah.
Truly.
And it's funny you mentioned back with Scandinavia and maybe Sweden and how they're handling it. I've also recently read that there's a lot of I think maybe cities in Europe and in Scandinavia that are kind of blocking off streets and taking their restaurants and taking their chairs and tables out into the smaller streets, not the main road,
Mm-hmm.
not the main roadway through Stockholm maybe, but all the little side streets are just getting blocked off. And they're putting the chairs out there to add more of that social distancing
Yeah.
aspect to the restaurant biz so that they're to try to pick up biz. But
Well, I hope we see more of that here in the U.S. I
yeah.
mean, I think we've seen it in some places where there's a possibility to put more seating outside. People are trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's, but those restaurants where, waiters and waitresses, you can't wear masks because it's off-putting to customers. That one blew me away, because if I were a customer in that
Because it's
restaurant,
what?
because it's off-putting to your customers. I know.
Wow.
That's what I thought. It was insane, because to me as a customer, I'd be like, if they're not wearing a mask, I'm sorry, I really don't want to eat here.
Yeah.
I've seen
Exactly.
that down here in Ocean City. There's a lot of businesses that are preparing food and their people aren't wearing masks. And okay, we're going to pay the price for it one way or another. And I just hope it's not personal price that they have to pay.
Yeah, there was a restaurant, maybe two of them, but specifically one. I'm not going to name it, but the manager. So a customer went in and was picking up food, and the manager came out, didn't have a mask on, and the customer questioned him, and he said, "I don't have time for it right now. Like I got too much going on. I don't have time for that right now." And I think it made the online review apps.
Mm.
I don't know if it made the news, but it definitely made the online review apps. I heard about it from somebody who was on social media. But it's things like that that's really going to kill the biz, and
Right.
people aren't going to go
They're
to
not
your.
going to come to your business
This
if
is
you're not taking the precautions.
and this will this will obviously lead into my next segue. But this is going to lead. This is going to be the new normal. Is that
For a long time.
and there's a lot of criticism about China, and that this came from China and how they handled it. But for the last decade, I've always seen footage of China, and then they've been wearing masks for all sorts of different reasons. You see
Yep.
half the population on the subway, people wearing masks, and it's not only because of SARS or N1H1, but it's for smog too.
Yeah,
It's for
absolutely.
smog, it's for pollution, it's for probably for flu season. And
Yep.
and before, I know a bunch of guys, and even myself, that don't want to shake hands. I'll just dap it up,
Yeah.
or just
Elbow bump.
the elbow bump was around a while,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're just like, germs. I'm not really a touchy feely guy, just germs. And so now that is beyond the norm right now. And
Yeah.
so there's no reason why I wouldn't be off put if I was at a restaurant, waiters and bartenders are wearing a mask. I'd wear a mask until it's time to put the food in my mouth. I can't put food in my mouth
Yeah.
with a mask on,
It might
obviously.
not taste quite the same.
Right. You can't suck a chimichanga through a mask,
It
but
doesn't quite work that way. Yeah.
yeah, but that's a bit ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we're in a world of extremes, um, and I hope we get back to a little bit less of an extreme world, but it is where we are. And
Yeah.
so those of us in the middle have just got to try and stay in the middle and draw people back to the middle if we can.
Which brings me to my next segue.
Sure.
What's your view or some of your ideas of what we would call the new normal?
Well, for the industry, there's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of animation coming out.
Yeah.
I think we're going to move. It'll be interesting to see. I would love to be moving to some virtual reality acting, and films that are, you see the video games. Assassin's Creed, for example, they're coming out with, or maybe it's already out. It's probably already out. I'm not a big video game fan, but I watch the graphics in them, and I watch the filming of it, and I think, oh wow, this is really cool, and if this can all be done virtually. And then I saw how it was made, and I realized there were full production crews doing all of these filming the stunts and full back. I was like, oh, so much for doing this in an animated way. That said, with the points, with the motion capture now, people can wear safe suits. They can wear a full green suit and do all of their manipulations and all of their acting, and then do the close-ups one-on-one. I mean, you don't get quite the connection you get face to face, but good actors, they act for the camera. They know how to do it. So everything can be safely done. It's going to cost a lot of money if people want to do it. And I think a lot of people are going to say, no, it's not worth it. I'm not going to take the risk. And other people are going to say, oh, no, it's not worth it. Money-wise, there's such a little risk.
Yeah.
And, oh, that person's healthy. I'm not going to worry about it. And people will get tested before they enter a set, and they will be quarantined on set. And it'll be a closed set if you have, a ongoing production.
Yeah.
So you will know that everybody on that set is healthy, and not being exposed, and you will proceed. But it's hard to see, for independence. So many of us, there's a lot of run and gun type of filming that has to happen with independence. There just isn't the budget to take 5 days to shoot one scene. You shoot 5 scenes in one day.
One day, yep.
And so, we are going to have to rethink how we do our stuff. And we're going to have to rethink our scripts. How can we simplify our interactions within a scene so that we can maybe film half the scene and film the other half of the scene and have minimal exposure to each other. And your crews are going to be wearing masks. It's I'm waiting for a vaccine.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. It's going to be a lot of voiceover work, a lot of animated work.
Yeah.
A lot of, and motion capture is changing. I wish I could bring it up or find this video where this guy is just doing a bunch of lines, and he's standing in front of a white wall, and they simply did a motion capture of him and turn him into this huge, clown orc.
Yeah.
And all he did was stand in front of a white wall. T-shirt,
Yep.
Shorts. I think he was wearing shorts, a T-shirt, just a regular guy, buzz cut, some scruff on his face, no makeup, no costume, not even a green suit. He was wearing something he might wear to the beach,
Yeah.
but he was standing in front of this huge white wall, and they did a whole motion capture him, turned him into a clown orc in like World of Warcraft type of
Yeah.
area, like a futuristic World of Warcraft type area. And the technology is growing, and I've mentioned before, a bunch of someone else kind of put a stamp on it. We've progressed 10 years in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of software companies are just overcharging, not
Yep.
overcharging, but they're hypercharging their upgrades. They're hypercharging their software,
Yep.
and they're really growing. I mean, because of Zoom, Facebook Meet, Google Meet,
Yeah.
and there was another one, but
Well, Skype has always been out there, but
Skype's always been out there. But now they're doing, the multiple,
you can have real
cameras.
meetings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
real meetings, like
Yeah.
what WebEx first came out with, and what Zoom, kicked off. Now everybody's
Yep.
kicking out these hypercharged softwares. Um, I mean, I've been getting a lot of upgrades on Adobe and Final Cut and a lot of my Mac softwares, like a lot more recently than
Yeah.
the standard. They're hypercharging and kicking out a lot of upgrades and a lot of new platforms, because what's going to happen is, so in the last month and a half, I've been doing a lot of virtual conferences, and before, I would go with a camera. I would go with an audio and camera
Hmm. A
package,
whole kit. Yeah.
a whole kit, camera and sound kit, with a laptop. And I was doing a lot of live streaming of these conferences, conventions, seminars, concerts even. And now it's all being done virtually through Zoom, and still taking the Zoom meeting and put it in that streaming software and streaming out to their websites. And everybody that was watching the stream is watching the same exact platform. But the funders and the investors and the executive producers are going to now look back at the last 6 months and say, our profits were exactly the same, but our expenses were an
Way
eighth.
down. Yeah.
So why would we go back to doing the expensive way? Everybody's still watching it. Everybody's still watching and learning the same exact thing, and learning all the new things, and partaking. We're seeing the same audience ratio. We're seeing the same viewership ratio, but our budget was a tenth.
Well, I think also the audiences have come to accept
Accepts.
this type of footage.
Exactly.
Before, if you had a conference call footage, they might, on news programs, they might have a Skype footage and you'd expect some glitching in it. But, that was not the predominant footage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody's shooting from home. I don't know if my daughter got me watching American Idol. They did the second half of the season from home with iPhones
Mm-hmm.
and ring lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, it's not really smooth and professional, but it's fine. It is fine. The content is what was important for that. And as long as the content's the important thing, the visual quality will just keep getting better.
Because it's the same quality of content. It's the same. Well, not. It's the same quality of talent.
Yeah.
It's not what you have, but what you do with it. And so we're stuck, at this certain level of technology and production value, but it's the same content. You and I are talking about the same freaking thing we'd be talking
Yes.
to if you came. I had a decent, one-on-one studio with mics and a camera and some lights and a backdrop. Now, had you come here, we would have had the same exact conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
but it's going to disrupt also how we film things. And there are going to be a lot of DPs, and particularly independents, who are going to be out of business.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard thing. And I think there's going to be a lot of things that we have not yet understood are happening within the industry. So I think the cost of production is going to come way down. We're not going to have a lot of epic films unless they're CGI. And that's, in a way that's good, in a way that's bad. It sort of democratizes it. At the same time, it also makes it that much more competitive. And it means that the art is going to be different. The art of film is going to change.
Yeah.
And the art of cinematography is going to change. And I don't, I can't really, when we're filming everything on iPhones, I remember when iPhone came out as a possible medium for filming pictures. And I remember when the first iPhone movie came out, and I thought, okay, this is where we're moving. Well, we've moved there really fast.
Yeah.
And the art of being a DP, the art of lighting will still be important when you're trying to create a mood, but for factual content, it's going to be a lot less important. What's more disturbing, though, is I think we're also going to get a lot more deep fakes. And we're
Yeah,
not going
deep
to,
fakes. Yeah.
yeah, and we're not going to be able to, the average person is not going to be able to tell it's a deep fake. And so we as a population have got to get much more media savvy. I think Zoom is helping us with that.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get a lot, there's still a lot of misinformation that's floating around. And it's created from misinformation.
Yeah.
People get the wrong idea, they get impassioned about it, and they send it out into the world. And I think Zoom is making it a face-to-face in a way that Facebook couldn't. So I think sometimes, we'll get groups together on Zoom now that somebody will bring up this crazy idea, and other people will, oh yeah, isn't that great? Isn't that horrible? Whatever. And somebody else will be the voice of reason and say, guys, think about it. That's not real. Here, look. And I'm hoping that Zoom will have that effect, and these kinds of media platforms where we can have social meetings, and draw some of the misinformation into to the light.
Yeah.
I hope. But there's always a good way to use a tool and a really bad way to misuse a tool. And that's part of what's going to be happening with this, and we're just going to have to filter out what's the good and what's the bad, and try not to kill each other in the process. At least this way, people can't have fist fights over information.
Right. No more fist fights. I mean, I remember maybe a couple of outbursts, in these live on these live broadcasts, these one-on-one, interviews. I think my last podcast, we were talking about R. Kelly's infamous interview with Gayle King, maybe about a year ago.
Yeah.
And he stood up and stormed off, and she kept her cool, but who knows what he was capable of doing right in that moment. Like,
Yeah.
what was he about to do? And now, it'll be a little bit more calmer, but the one that hangs up is going to be, clearly the one that storms off. And it's like the one that couldn't, the one that
couldn't take it,
couldn't take the facts, couldn't stand up for himself or handle the pressure. But at least it's just going to be like a click. And then, but yeah, you're right. And I don't think we're going to lose out on our favorite actors. Sam Jackson's performance in The Incredibles as Mr. Freeze, I think it was, or I forget what the characters were in that franchise, The Incredibles. But Sam Jackson played a character, and I think it was Putty from Seinfeld was the father, the superhero father. Holly. But I know Holly Hunter was the mother, the superpowered mother of that family.
Yeah.
And our favorite actors are still going to be able to do work. It's just going to be a lot of way more voiceover work. At home, producers and executive producers and studios could easily ship a decent quality camera to someone's house with a tripod, with simple instructions, set this up, do this. And a lot of these actors know how to do that anyway.
Yeah. You see it online all over the place now.
They've been on set enough to know how to set up a camera and a tripod. Is a simpler set camera on a tripod, stand in front of a white screen, do all sorts of stuff. You just you turn left, you do about face, you turn right, you stand there in front, and that thing is going to read you, and it could throw you into a sci-fi CGI movie You know, Final Fantasy was pumping out some movies, you know, not just games, but they did Final Fantasy's Ghosts, not Ghosts of Mars, but it was something like that.
Well, the Assassin's Creed, I think, has come with a movie too. That whole franchise. I think they're
Now,
called.
it was a CGI heavy live action film,
Yeah.
but now they're going to be pumping out just CGI, strictly CGI movies, and
Yeah.
not exactly Pixar, but it's going to be, oh geez, it was a movie that the Final Fantasy franchise put out. You know, Steve Buscemi was in it, Alec Baldwin was in it, but they did a lot of they did oh, you know what, the best example would be Tom Hanks's Express trans
Oh yeah, the Christmas movie,
the Polar
Polar
Express.
Express.
Polar
Yeah.
Express, that the best example. But all Tom Hanks has to do now is stand in front of a white wall or a green wall at his home, do all his lines, maybe be laved up, you know, for proper audio, and you know, we could still be making movies like the Polar
Yeah.
Express with our favorite stars, with our favorite performers, and
Yeah.
our favorite artists. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Now the question though will be how we indies do this. You know, how are we going to stay relevant?
well,
And
um,
that's, I think we can become more relevant, but as all of these stars who have money also move into the production field and become independents themselves, some of us with lesser names, yourself not included, because obviously everybody knows who Glenn Nelson is in production and
sure,
sound, and but you know it is a challenge because getting the attention is always going to be the challenge that it's been before.
yeah,
And the mechanisms for getting attention um, are changing as well.
yeah. Well,
So
I'm always plugging my stuff, and I've mentioned it before. There's these two shows I did, Rogues Gallery and Sinister Infinite, and their Rogues Gallery is based in the DC comic universe. Sinister is based in the Marvel universe. But I produced them in the vein of those low budget ID crime shows, those crime reenactment shows.
yeah,
So, you know, you have a couple of actors in front of a green screen, and we shot it right here in this
yeah,
basement studio, but a couple of actors in front of a green screen, and they're playing, you know, the criminologists, the reporters, but they're characters in that universe.
yeah,
And then they're talking about, you know, the Joker or the Riddler, and then the rest of it is, you know, archive footage, archive photos, forensic sketches,
absolutely.
and the forensic sketches are the panels from the comics. And so there's very little that was actually on-set production except for the green screen stuff.
Yeah,
Everything else is found.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that,
Yeah,
and it works. That's the thing, is it really
yeah.
does work, and I think the audiences are becoming much more attuned to accepting that as well. I
Well,
think we're going to
yeah,
see fewer reality TV shows.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, those reality shows, what are they going to talk about? They're not going to be out doing stuff to start their drama.
Right.
They're not going to be going, you know, the Jersey Shore is not going to be going to the Jersey Shore
Well,
anymore.
you know, it brings me back to the very original Big Brother,
Hmm.
when they were just literally a psychological experiment of
Yeah,
locking these people in a house. Not the game show it is today, but
right.
you know, that's a possibility. But
Even,
I
I mean,
don't think that would play today.
even before Big Brother was The Real World, season
Yeah.
one was those
On the,
it was either 6 or 8 people in that house in Seattle.
yeah.
I think
Yep.
I think it was Seattle. And it was just, you know, different people from different parts of the states,
Yeah.
and they all came to this house in Seattle, and you know, they stopped being nice and started getting real.
Yeah.
But you can't have these strangers in the house anymore.
No.
You know,
No.
we you know, I think Airbnbs are going out, and you know, half the hotels and regular B&Bs are going out, and so
Well, until people start traveling again, the whole travel industry is you know going to be one bankruptcy
right,
after another, and
yeah,
that's you know that's going to change as well. Everything is going to revolutionize, and it may be that you have to have 2 days vacancy in each room before you can put the next person in there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I think it's going
that
to be
kind of thing. So
I think it's going to be the biggest. I think it's going to be a bigger rise of podcasts, And I think I saw on Hulu they're doing this reality show, the Red Nose Experiment or something like
Yeah.
that. And all these different people put on a red nose and they're doing different talents. It's like, I think, like you said, American Idol can still work. America's Got Talent can still work. X Factor and The Voice can
Yeah.
still work because of the dynamic. But like you said, reality shows are going to tank for right now because there's nothing for them to do to follow them
Dramatic
doing.
crap. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you get the Kardashians. Maybe you can pull off that Big Brother-esque with the Kardashians because there's already an interest.
Established.
They're already established. There's already
Yeah.
an interest, but it's not going to be a crew in there, and it's not going to be them going outside the house. Half that show takes place in their house,
Yeah.
dealing with their kids and kind of like discussing the next thing they're going to do with business. So they're
You know a lot more about this one than I do. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode of the Kardashians.
the wife watches it,
Yeah.
and so I've had, unfortunately.
Yeah. Blame the wife.
Yep, I'm blaming the wife. Absolutely blaming the wife. But I've seen enough to know that half of that takes place in their house, and they could probably pull off that old school Big Brother
Yeah.
production of robocams and security, kind of like the security cam-esque thing, the hidden cam-esque kind of cinematography of just them in their daily lives. But even them, who'd want to watch that after a whole season of that?
Well, and also themselves being locked in our own homes. It's like not that interesting to watch other people locked in their home.
I mean, unless you're definitely voyeuristic,
Yeah.
but other than that, it's like no. But
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the TV audience is,
I guess they are.
or
Yeah,
maybe fortunately for those programs.
yeah. So,
it's all types.
yeah, absolutely. So if you had one point or one bit of advice for our viewers, what would that be?
Patience. Take care of yourself and your fellow person, and really just, this will pass. This is bad, but it's not. In a way, we're talking about it as a war on the virus and all that kind of thing, but this isn't like a war against another country. This isn't international strife. This is domestic strife. This is biological strife. There's no reason to be harsh against anybody because it's nobody's within this environment. There's nobody at fault,
right,
for biology. How we maintain the biology and what we do about it, that's a societal thing, and we as a society are going to figure it out. But that's the point. We're going to figure it out, and we've got the technology to figure out the vaccines. If nothing else, the interpreting I was doing for this child and the genetic therapy that she was getting really showed me how far we have come with this kind of technology. And yeah, it's going to take a year before we've got a widely available vaccine. But if you think, how long did it take for them to get a polio vaccine? How long did it take to get smallpox vaccines? We didn't start getting vaccines till the middle of the 20th century. And people were dying of measles. Needlessly, people still die of measles. We have the tools to make these things. We will make them. My biggest advice for anybody who's indie is keep up with the technology. I mean, it's really hard because I'm trying to watch what's going on and see where it's going to go, because I don't want to be left out. Mm-hmm. When we all start emerging from this, I want to have a career. I want to have things to do. And I don't want to be stuck in old school. I'm looking at my RE kit of lights in my garage. I'm thinking, am I ever going to need these again?
Right.
No, I haven't really needed them much in the past couple of years. Yeah, okay, I've done a few interviews using them. That's great. And I've got a big fluorescent panel, and I've got some other things. But with the new technologies, are we really going to need those things? Mm-hmm. And what are we going to need them for? So that's the other thing. I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I save mood lighting? Oh, well, it can be done by graphics. Who needs mood lighting now?
Right.
Who needs to highlight a under stare area because you can just fix it in post? Our least favorite words producers have,
Yeah.
but you can, and a lot of people, they now plan to do that. So keep up with technology and be patient and be good to your fellow man. That's my 3 points.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, are there any plugs, links, socials you wanna plug out there?
Well, I would just say keep a lookout for Death of a Revolution, 5-part miniseries that I told you about. You can find it on IMDb. We're building it there. The scripts have won all kinds of awards. I mean, there's like 28 awards that the scripts have been winning. There's 5 scripts. So I expect we will get into production eventually. Look for the politics of TPO, the politics of trees is the first one. Hopefully that'll be coming to PBS, at least MPT. We're hoping, knocking on wood and all of that. We may revamp the opening, make it more exciting. But yeah, that's what I've got going on, and yeah, it's good talking to you, Glenn.
Yeah, good talking to you. Well, you heard it here, Virginia RYKER. Thanks so much for joining me, and check out her links below in the description. And to my viewers out there, like, subscribe, share, comment, thumbs up if you loved it, and ring that bell for notifications, and check us out next time.